Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, Headliner Nation, what's going on? Welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here with some of that wide receiver goodness that you need every single week with our start and sit episode, and we are going to jump right into it. But like we do at the beginning of all of our start sit episodes, we got to talk about our percentages from the week prior. And I'm going to be upfront and honest, last week was not my best week for starts and sits. Unfortunately, coming in at a 59% hit rate last week is just unfortunate. We had some things going against us. Don't want to make excuses, but we had several quarterbacks get hurt that kind of messed with the games a little bit. We had a lot of studs that dropped some duds, and then we had some guys with really tough matchups that ended up playing really, really well. But I promise you, Headliner Nation, we're going to get better this week. So let's go ahead and talk about all of our start and sits. But don't forget, we've got a huge giveaway going on in September right now. That's right. If you download the Prize Picks app, if you create a new account using code word headliners and you deposit at least $20, they are going to match your deposit up to $100, but then you're going to be entered in for this awesome giveaway. We have got a signed Justin Jefferson jersey. We've got a Manscaped perfect package and a Trevor Lawrence rookie card. All of this well over $200. You're going to get all of this just by, again, downloading the Prize Picks app, creating new account, code word headliners, depositing at least $20, and then at the end of the month, we are going to give away this awesome package of gifts. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Let's get ready to roll. All right, our Thursday night matchup is a tale of two teams that are off to a surprising start, playing much better than what a lot of people may have anticipated. Carolina is going to be headed to Houston for the Thursday night game this week. On the Carolina side, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson are both going to be starts for me. DJ Moore's got 19 targets over the course of the first two games, but we should start to see that ceiling climb soon, all right? He's getting the targets. Those are there. Right now, we're kind of missing those big plays and touchdowns. When those start to come, though, his fantasy points are going to creep even higher. Now with Robbie Anderson this week, I have him at a very low ceiling, but still going to list him as a start. The thing about Houston so far this season is they're hanging around in all of their games. So Carolina, instead of giving Christian McCaffrey 25-30 carries this game, they might be throwing the ball a little bit longer if Houston hangs around a little bit longer. Robbie Anderson did have 6 targets last game. Sooner or later, Terrace Marshall Jr. is going to bust out. Robbie Anderson is very, very all over the place for me, right? So if Terrace Marshall Jr. starts to bust out, then Robbie Anderson is going to have to go back to being a sit. But in this matchup, I'm going to go ahead and list him as a start. For the Houston Texans, Davis Mills is going to be the starter this week. No Tyrod Taylor. Brandon Cooks, really the only legit option on this team. Nico Collins, he's headed to the IR. So we have Chris Conley, Anthony Miller, who has been inactive since injuring his shoulder in the preseason. But with Collins out, we could see Anthony Miller finally get activated and into the lineup. But again, Davis Mills, younger kid, first career start. Carolina's front seven has been after it to begin the season. It could be a really tough game. So the only guy I trust from Houston is going to be Brandon Cooks. Washington will head to Buffalo this week, and Terry McLaurin and surprisingly Adam Humphries will be a start for me this week. Buffalo is a tough matchup, but the Giants matchup with Bradbury was also supposed to be tough, and Terry McLaurin did absolutely fine. Terry McLaurin's kind of got into, now he was a start for me last week. I did mention though he was going to be a little bit lower in the rankings because I was worried about the Bradbury shadow, but Terry McLaurin ended up being just fine. He ends up playing well. He's becoming one of those guys that really are just kind of matchup proof where we're throwing out there every single week. Fire him up again. And for Adam Humphries, Buffalo slot corner Taron Johnson, he's been good, but teams have really been focused in on him. He is their slot cornerback. He has had 13 targets come his way during the beginning of the season in these first 2 weeks. That is the most for a slot corner in the league. Last week, Adam Humphries got 8 targets. So it is very clear that teams facing Buffalo like to push the ball into the slot a little bit more. And because of that, with the connection that Humphries had last week against Heineke, I could see another 5 to 8 targets this week. And if he catches all of them, 10 points in half PPR is well within range. For the Buffalo Bills, Diggs, Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders will be starts for me this week. The Washington front is going to make Allen get rid of the ball quickly, okay? The defense hasn't performed that well to begin the season, but they're going to get going here pretty quickly. So I think Diggs and Beasley are going to be the biggest benefactors because of that. Gabe Davis, I'm tossing to the side for right now. Haven't really utilized him too much. He's really a big play, touchdown dependent type of player right now because Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that's been getting quite a few targets as well. Now, he's kind of number 3 on the list, but going up against Washington, I don't think Buffalo is going to run the ball much. Washington has allowed over 48 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. That is 7th most in the league right now. So expect Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills to sling it around. All 3 of these guys could get more than enough points. The time has come, Chicago. Justin Fields. Fingers crossed. Hopefully he will be the starter this week. We have yet to hear word on whether or not it will or will not be Andy Dalton, but it is something we will continue to monitor throughout the week. Allen Robinson, he's going to be a start for me. Even if he's got a lower floor, we are not sending a wide receiver 1 type player. Now, Fields didn't look great when he came into the game last week, but that's okay. He's going to get going. He's going to end up being fine. I'm not that worried about it. Allen Robinson will end up being his main target if he starts to grow into being the starter. Now, hopefully, if he's the starter, we don't go back to Andy Dalton anytime soon. Darnell Mooney and Marquise Goodwin are going to end up being sits for me. Again, this Cleveland front is they're going to kind of be all over the place. So I'm only really looking at one wide receiver from Chicago right now. And on the Cleveland side of the ball, I'm not really feeling this matchup. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more during the tight end segment. Can't talk about it right now. But we know Jarvis Landry is going to be out. Odell Beckham Jr. at this point is still injured out, doubtful for me because I have no clue on God's green earth when Odell Beckham Jr. is going to grace the lineup. Now, if we find out he is going to play this week, maybe I do start him. But for right now, I can't tell you that. So I am moving forward under the impression that there will be no Odell Beckham Jr. So it's going to be Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Anthony Schwartz. So for me, I'm looking to DPJ this week. Why? Because he has the 3rd most slot snaps on the team. Jarvis Landry was number 1. And there is another person that, again, I'll talk about in the tight end episode a little bit more. Chicago has been burned by slot wide receivers so far this season. If you remember, the LA Rams, Cooper Kupp out of the slot, torched them, right? Last week against Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd, 7 targets, 7 receptions, over 70 yards. Okay, another slot wide receiver. So if Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be the main slot wide receiver this week, he is probably the guy that will end up seeing the most coming towards him. Anthony Schwartz saw a little bit more volume a couple of weeks ago, but he wasn't even looked at last week. And I don't really know about Higgins. I'm not really feeling that either. If those two are going to be on the outside and we're getting DPJ into the slot, he's going to be the guy for Cleveland this week. Baltimore at Detroit, and I'm going to give Detroit some credit. Their offense looks pretty good right now. The defense is gross and sucks, but Jared Goff and the offense is actually playing really, really well right now. So got to give them some credit there. For the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, the Detroit Lions are going to be missing Jeffrey Okudah. They just lost another cornerback as well that's going to be out for a while. The secondary is depleted. They're not really creating a whole lot of pressure. Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins, both of these guys are going to be starts for me. Detroit is giving up plenty of points to wide receivers right now. Brown and Watkins should both see solid targets this week. And over the last week between the two, they saw 17 combined targets. So these are going to be the main guys this week that we're going to be taking a look at. For Detroit, only one guy that we're taking a look at, and that's Quintez Cephas. Now, for Cephas, I couldn't include him in the waiver wire video this week because I recorded on Sunday night so it can come out Monday mornings. Monday Night Football hasn't been played yet, but holy crap, did Cephas and Goff have quite the connection? He is the guy right now. There are lots of targets going to him, the tight end position with TJ Hawkinson, and the running backs as well. Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyrell Williams with a concussion. I don't know when he's going to end up being back, but St. Brown and Raymond, yeah, they're seeing some targets, but it's Cephas that is seeing the majority, and if he scores a touchdown, he's well over 10 points for you. Indianapolis and Tennessee is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Don't forget, one of our main sponsors here, our friends over at Manscaped. If you go to their website and use code word headliners when checking out, you're going to get 20% off of your entire order and free shipping. So head over to manscaped.com, and when you check out, use that code word headliners to get a nice hefty discount and some free shipping for all of your products over there. For the Indianapolis Colts, this Indianapolis and Tennessee is a must-watch matchup at the wide receiver position for the fact that both of these teams are in the top 6 of most fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers right now. Tennessee allows 68 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. That is the most in the league. Now, right now, I've got Michael Pittman and Zach Pascal listed as starts. Paris Campbell is going to be a sit just because he ended up missing last week. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go or not, so I'm going to keep an eye on that for you. But Michael Pittman and Zach Pascal, Pascal's got 3 touchdowns this season. He's looking like that he's kind of that 1A, 1B with Michael Pittman, who finally had that breakout week, going for over 100 yards. So even if it is Jacob Eason and not Carson Wentz that starts, and I'm planning on it being Eason and not Wentz. Wentz is pretty banged up right now. But if it is, this is still a matchup that is more than capable of producing some fantasy stars for you this weekend. And for Tennessee, we're going A.J. Brown and we're going with Julio Jones. A.J. Brown had some drop issues last week, okay? And I don't know if that affected Julio being a little bit better or if Julio just finally had that breakout game. Obviously, Julio and A.J. were both starts for me, but A.J. Brown was one of those stud duds that I talked about last week. I'm going to coin that phrase, stud duds. We're going to use that moving forward. But I'm going to go back to them again because, again, the number 6 team in the league that gives up the most fantasy points to wide receivers is Indianapolis. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones should dominate in this matchup. So the Chargers have looked a little mediocre to begin the year. Maybe they're just brushing some rust off, getting themselves going again. But hopefully they pick it up soon. Could this be the matchup? Yeah. Absolutely. We got a big shootout coming. 18 targets last week between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That is a lot going to 2 different guys. They kind of reversed roles, though, because last week Mike Williams saw a little bit more of the volume and Keenan Allen saw a little bit more of the big plays. And quite honestly, I love that because that means they're utilizing Mike Williams a little bit more with those type of routes over the middle and things of that nature to get him some more volume instead of just sending him streaking down the field like it felt like a lot of the time that the old regime did with him. So this helps set Mike Williams up for success, but it is also going to bring some big play opportunity for Keenan Allen, which we would be very welcome to. Both of these guys will be starts this week going up against Kansas City, and the only guy for Kansas City right now is going to be Tyreek Hill. And why? Because there is no clear number 2 behind him. You know, Mecole Hardman might have some weeks where, yeah, he rips off a big play, but we just haven't seen it enough. And when is it going to happen? Do we want to bank on that as of right now? No, because it's going Tyreek Hill, it's going Travis Kelce, and then it's getting spread out to everybody else. Like Byron Pringle, like, dude wasn't even on my list last week, and he comes out and he leads the team in receiving yards. What's that about? That's why, with there being no clear number 2, it's really hard to start anyone behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce on this team right now. New Orleans at New England, and last week, New England made Zach Wilson look like a 6th-round draft pick and not the 2nd overall draft pick. Could they do the same thing this week to Jameis Winston, who also looked like trash last week? After that first week, we were like, oh, he's back, the LASIK work. And then last week it was like, oh, Jameis, good to see ya. Not. So for the New Orleans Saints, I'm not starting any wide receiver right now. Going into Foxborough, playing against New England is not a great matchup for them. He didn't look good last week. Callaway hasn't looked that great. Deontay Harris looked all right in the first week, but now he didn't look like anything. And little Jordan Humphrey is out there too. And you've got 3 tight ends that are getting to me, the offense just feels like a mess right now outside of Alvin Kamara. So I know Marquez Callaway is a guy that a lot of people were excited about to start the season, but I'm going to go ahead and take a step back on him right now. For New England, I'm going to go with Jacoby Myers this week as my start because I think this is the week that, well, number one, James White definitely involved much more in the passing game this week than what we have seen previously and on the ground as well, which is good to see. But I also think this is the week that we see both of those tight ends really start to hit home. Aguilar, Myers, and Bourne, I'm only going to go with Myers this week. Nelson Aguilar, one reason that I'm going to sit him is because New Orleans has done a really good job at limiting big plays. They are not getting beat deep right now. It is just not happening. They're getting beat more over the middle of the field, on the outside, short games. They're keeping the ball in front of them. That's Jacoby Myers, another 6 targets last week, played another 52 snaps. So on the season, Jacoby Myers has played 95% of the snaps that they have taken on offense. He is not coming off the field and he's getting the most targets. And since Aguilar, the guy that would beat you deep, is going up against a team that is not letting you beat them deep, Aguilar will probably get a little bit of an extra look. Myers will be the guy, and so will the tight ends, but that's for a different video. Atlanta will be headed out to face the New York Giants this week. And for Atlanta, one thing I want to note. In this video, we have Cordarrelle Patterson listed as a wide receiver. Next week, he will be going back to the running backs. When we started to do our research this week, a couple of platforms we came across had him listed as only a wide receiver. Then when we said, okay, we're going to move him to wide receiver, we looked and then they moved and they added a running back designation as well. So every single website now has him listed as at least a running back, and several of them have him listed as a running back wide receiver. And not only that, when you take a look at Cordarrelle Patterson, he has played, or as far as like his targets goes and his snaps goes, his snaps at the position, he has gotten double the amount of snaps at running back than he has at wide receiver. So we are going to move him back to running back next week, but because Jake had already recorded, we needed to talk about him. We put him into wide receiver. We'll get him back there next week. I am going to list Cordarrelle Patterson as a start this week. You need to check your league. Could be a running back, could be a wide receiver, could be both. But over the last 2 weeks, he's played 30 snaps at the running back position. He's only played 14 at wide receiver. So what they are doing with Cordarrelle, and here's the thing, Mike Davis is still getting touches and he's still getting targets. So Mike Davis is out on the field a majority of the time. Cordarrelle Patterson is really only coming in and he's playing these few snaps per game where there's really plays that are being designed for him. So if you see him on the field, there's a really good chance that he's going to be, possibly anyway, the focal point of that play because they're utilizing him when he's out there, but he's not out there all the time. Is he going to take over for Mike Davis? No, it's going to continue to be Mike Davis. But if you are somebody who could play him at a wide receiver 3 position, that's basically like using that third wide receiver 3 position as a flex spot, and you get to play a guy that's going to get 15 snaps at running back. You want to do that. So I'm going to list him as a start this week. For Calvin Ridley, 18 targets the first 2 games. We're just waiting for that huge game to come right now, okay? Volume's there. His ADOT, his average depth per target, is over 11 still, which is good, which means they're still trying to target him down the field. It's not one of those issues like where we saw with Juju Smith-Schuster where all of a sudden he becomes the number 1 wide receiver and he can't win down the field. That's not happening. Calvin Ridley can still win down the field. For the New York Giants, I talked about Kenny Golladay a little bit, and I asked everybody, do we need to drop him? I wasn't saying that you needed to, but we were having an open conversation about, is Kenny Golladay bad enough that we're going to have to talk about dropping him soon, or what are we going to do with him? And if it is going to happen, it is going to happen this week against the Atlanta Falcons. They are still trying to force the ball down the field to him. His average depth of target right now is over 15 yards down the field. And also in week 1, he had 3 contested catches on 3 contested targets. That's pretty good. So he's still winning some of those battles down the field. Now, in my waiver wire video, I did mistakenly say that he was yelling at Daniel Jones, but it wasn't until after that I had recorded that and it dropped that we found out he was actually yelling at Garrett. I have a feeling Danny Dimes is going to try and get him the ball this week. I think they're going to focus in on that, and we're going to be like, hey, if we're going to get you going, we got to do it now. Sterling Shepard, though, I mean, he's a start. He's the wide receiver 1 on this team. He has 16 receptions right now, which leads the league. He has 270 yards, or 207 yards, which is 7th in the league. And he is your wide receiver 2 in your lineup every single week. Joe Burrow sucked a little bit last week, just a little bit. And it's to be expected. Dude's coming back from a pretty major knee injury. He's going to have some weeks as he kind of gets that dust knocked off. He's going to be just fine. I'm not worried about it. But Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, all 3 of them are going to be starts for me this week. And I talked about it last week with a couple of teams. Basically, you are being forced into a position where if you own Chase, Boyd, or Higgins, you've got to start them on a weekly basis. Why? Because it could be any single one of them any given week. All 3 wide receivers are right around 10 fantasy points per league. It's just depending on who you choose that has the more upside. I mean, last week, people gave me some ish in the rankings because I had Tyler Boyd over T. Higgins. Well, guess what? Tyler Boyd was the top targeted wide receiver on that team last week. Okay, he didn't score like Higgins and Chase did, but he was the guy that was looked at the most. And I told you all that was going to happen with this team, that we are going to have weeks like that where one guy is going to be great and then disappear the next week. And then it's going to be the next guy. It's going to be all over the place. But all 3 of them are going to be right around 10 fantasy points every single week, especially if it's a matchup going up against Pittsburgh where you're going to probably be throwing the ball quite a bit. On the flip side, this is the same thing in Pittsburgh. Both of these teams are very even in terms of how their makeup is, right? They run the ball a lot, or they have running backs that they want to use a lot. They have 3 stud wide receivers, and they're kind of focused on trying to stay balanced with that, right? But they don't have offensive lines that are that great, so they end up throwing the ball probably a little bit more than they would want to. So Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, who were both starts for me last week, stay that way. Chase Claypool, he's going to make his way back into the start section this week. We're going to keep an eye on Deontay Johnson, though. He could be limited this week. We'll have to wait and see. If we get any word that he's going to be going into this week limited, then we might have to change him to a sit. But he's getting more than enough targets right now that even if he is limited, you're probably going to be forced to play him. Just keep those fingers crossed. Arizona at Jacksonville, and baby Rondell Moore. Let's go. One of my favorite draft prospects this past season, Rondell Moore, made one heck of an impact in the game last week, and he could be settling into that wide receiver 2 position. Now, is it going to happen? I don't think so. Not right away, because it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins, and then it is going to be, again, kind of a mix behind him on just who's getting open the most. Now, Rondell Moore, I think, has the best bet to do that. Christian Kirk and A.J. Green for me. A.J. Green's going to be touchdown dependent every single week. If he doesn't score a touchdown, he's probably not going to hit 10 fantasy points. For Christian Kirk, I just don't see the upside in starting 3 guys this week, because I think going up against Jacksonville, we could see them using James Conner and Chase Edmonds a little bit. But right now, I think Kirk ends up getting close, but it's going to be kind of touchdown dependent. I think Moore and DeAndre Hopkins are your best bets to hit that this week. For Jacksonville, we're going to be starting Marvin Jones Jr. He is the wide receiver 1 in this offense right now, okay? Laviska Shenault, I am going to go back to him for another week. I'm going to give him one more chance. Why is that? Because his 16 targets on the season is just as much as A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, Tyler Lockett. He just hasn't broken any big plays yet. And that's kind of because how they've utilized him. My hope is that this week, going up against Arizona with a tough pass rush, that they're going to be looking to get rid of the ball like that. That's going to be Laviska's chance to really eat up some of those targets over the middle of the field. Last week was a disaster for him. I get it, but I don't want to give up just yet. I hopped onto the bandwagon a little bit late this offseason. I've kind of liked Chenal, but I've never had a firm stance on either side. Right now, I don't want to give up just yet. We'll talk about, if he has another dud week, we'll talk about it. The reason I'm going with him over Chark this week, though, is because Chark has only caught 4 of the 15 targets that has come his way this season. And really, his only plays have been big-time plays. He has 2 drops as well so far. And we're looking at, again, a pass rush that may not give them enough time for Lawrence to sit back and just wait for Chark to get open. Zach Wilson did not look good last week against New England, and now he gets to head out west to face the Denver Broncos at home. And I tell you what, I don't want any piece of this New York Jets offense this week. None. I don't want Wilson. I don't want any of the running backs. I don't want any of the wide receivers. I don't want any of the tight ends. Get them all out of here. This is going to be just... After the awful performance we saw from Wilson last week, and I'm not saying he's a bust, I'm not buying into him going into Denver and miraculously turning it around against that defense. Jamison Crowder, I don't know when he's going to be back. Denzel Mims, his time with the Jets seems to be coming with a close. So it's going to leave like Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Braxton Bryos last week was the guy. Where'd you come from? Jeff Smith is also getting some targets. So at some point in time, it's like we're probably going to be able to start Davis and Moore at some point in time, but it's not this week. We're not going there this week. We'll keep an eye on it in the future, though. For the Denver Broncos, we're going to put Cortland Sutton back to a start again this week. Looked great, looked healthy last week. That's what we love to see. Tim Patrick is going to go over KJ Hamler. So the Jets, have not been too bad against opposing wide receivers so far. The defense has played okay, right? They've played okay. I mean, not great, not outstanding, but they've done a decent job at limiting wide receivers. So I'm expecting a lot of Sutton, a lot of running backs, and a lot of Noah Fant. Patrick, for me, has some touchdown upside. If he doesn't get that touchdown, though, he's probably not going to end up hitting. We're going to Miami. And well, actually, technically, we're going to Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. Okay, so 2 different songs. We're going to get away from the singing now. Miami's going to be heading to Las Vegas this week without a starter at quarterback as of right now. Tua, rib injury, goes down, has to leave the game. Not broken, which is great to hear, but it's all going to be about pain management this week. If it is too sore, it's going to be Jacoby Brissett starting for the Miami Dolphins. And trust me, I like Jacoby Brissett. I've got nothing against the guy. I think he could be a fine NFL quarterback. Really hasn't gotten a ton of chances outside of being in Indianapolis. But, with Jacoby Brissett, if it ends up being him, I just don't know about that this week. The Las Vegas pass rush this season so far has been no joke, and I need to know who's going to be starting. So it's going to be really, really important to keep an eye on the rankings video, because if anyone's going to be a start for me this week, it's probably going to be Jalen Waddle. I'll go to Jalen Waddle if we find out later who it's going to be. If it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, my concern about him is he's going to be taking off quite a bit. He's a little bit more of a runner than what Tua is. If Tua is going to be the guy, then what I expect them to do is a quick, short passing game. Get the ball out of his hand. Don't let him get hit too often. Get it into his receiver's hands and make them make plays. That's going to be Jalen Waddle for you. For the Las Vegas Raiders, Bryan Edwards is going to be a sit. They may not need to throw that much this week. But Carr is playing so well. How can I really move away from some of these guys? Henry Ruggs coming off a really, really good week, so we're going to go back to him. Hunter Renfrow, he has been one of the better slot options in all of the league so far. He is a great wide receiver 3 in PPR formats. Now, All of our research is in half PPR, and that's what we base everything on with our statistics here. But even then, if they're throwing it quite a bit, I definitely see a connection forming between Hunter Renfrow and Derek Carr in this offense this year, and I think that is going to keep up. Listen, I'm not going to call anybody out by names because realistically, if you're trolling me over some starts, I'm not remembering your name anyway. But I tried to tell you all about Tampa Bay, okay? This is another one of these teams that is going to make you rip your hair out on a weekly basis, okay? Remember when some of you gave me just absolute crap in week 1 for having Mike Evans so high and Antonio Brown so low? And then remember last week when all I heard was Antonio Brown's the guy. He's going to get all... You don't know. I don't know. Hell, Bruce Arians probably doesn't even know. The only person that knows how every single week is going to go is Thomas Mother effing Brady, and he's the guy throwing the football. Nobody knows what's going to happen with these wide receivers on a weekly basis. Here is what I do know. Antonio Brown, if he doesn't get a ton of volume, he's not going to be the guy. 3 targets, 1 catch for 7 yards last week. Mike Evans, he's going to score touchdowns, but he's going to probably be touchdown dependent at times. But 9 targets last week. The dude in week 1 put up a dud. Y'all wrote him off, and then now the dude goes out and scores. He's not going anywhere. Antonio Brown is not the wide receiver 1 on this team. Mike Evans is not the wide receiver 1 on this team. The only consistent guy on this team right now is Chris Godwin because he's the guy that's doing the most with the targets that he's given right now. And he's kind of landing in between Antonio Brown and Mike Evans. Those two are going to switch every week probably, or every couple of weeks. Mike Evans might have a really good game. If he does, Antonio Brown is probably not going to have a great game because freaking Gronk's having insane games right now. Is that going to change, or is Gronk going to score 100 million touchdowns this year? That's the problem. There are so many guys in this passing game. Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Rob Gronkowski are not going to be able to be guys that blow up every single week. Somebody is going to get left out. But if you own them, you start them. You have no other choice. You are going to have issues throughout the season, though. Had to get that off my chest because I tried telling you all, and I got some pushback from some people. It's going to change on a weekly basis. The one thing we know about the LA Rams, though, is that Matthew Stafford loves himself some Cooper Kupp. The Kupp-Stafford connection is insane right now. Kupp is putting up yards. He's scoring touchdowns. He's the wide receiver 1. Woods hasn't had the same upside as Kupp, but he's still seeing targets. He's the wide receiver 2 on a team that does still like to throw the football. We don't know what's happening with Darrell Henderson. We don't know where his injury stands. Van Jefferson is the wide receiver 3 on the team. Stafford is looking his way deep every once in a while, and he's finding him deep every once in a while. But it's going to be a little bit of back and forth. But going up against Tampa Bay this week, in a game where I expect the ball to be thrown a ton, 3 starters this week, because all 3 of these guys can hit 10 points or more. Oh, baby, Russ is cooking, and Tyler Lockett is looking like a stud once again. Those concerns over, those up and down performances, the inconsistencies, they have been gone so far this season. Lockett is number 2 in the league in receiving yards, and number 2 in the league in receiving yards and yards per reception, and he is tied for first in touchdowns as well. Minnesota is allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Metcalf and Lockett are both locked in starts this week. For Minnesota, we are going to be starting Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and welcome to the program, KJ Osborne, who leads the team in receiving yards right now. I was going to include KJ Osborne in my week 2 waiver wire video, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't know. I'm not feeling it yet. I'm feeling it now after week 2, ladies and gentlemen. The dude is taking advantage of his role in this offense, working out of the slot, going back and forth a little bit with Adam Thielen and how they do that. Cook is dealing with a sprain right now of his ankle, but I wonder if that's going to limit some of his touches, maybe not only on the ground, but through the air. And if it does, Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne, boom, boom, boom. They're going to be looking good. Right now, Justin Jefferson is seeing a lot of that RB1 coverage come up to him, which means, or excuse me, RB1, cornerback 1 coverage come over to him, which means Thielen and Osborne, they're taking advantage of it. Green Bay looked a lot better this week, but that first half against the Lions, the defense did not look that great for Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers in the offense looked a lot better, but it was really propelled by Aaron Jones. What are we going to see from Green Bay moving forward? Heading out to San Francisco, a much tougher matchup than what the Lions were. Only going with Devontae Adams this week. Now, the wide receiver matchups may be tough this week, but we're not going to be sitting Adams, okay? This is not the best matchup in the world, but we're obviously not going to be sitting him. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I had him listed as a start last week. And what did Aaron Rodgers do? Well, his first pass to MVS is underthrown and hits the cornerback in the back of the head. And then his second pass to MVS right on the goal line, MVS is wide open in the end zone, and he throws it behind him. And then his third pass, wide open MVS, 5 yards on the cornerback, and he overthrows him. Damn it, Aaron. You screwed it up. I could have had him as a start last week. Would have been a hit. We're not going back to him this week against San Francisco, though. He did look towards MVS several times last week, but San Francisco is only allowing 26 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, 4th fewest in the league. I think this is going to be a pretty tough matchup for Green Bay, and I am not 100% sold that this team has fixed their issues. It was Detroit, and they didn't look great in the first half, and it was Aaron Jones that did basically everything. So, they're going to be going up against San Francisco now. And for the San Francisco wide receivers, Deebo Samuel is going to be a start for me. I mean, Quintus Cephas lit Green Bay up this past week. Deebo could be used in kind of the same way. Again, Deebo and Cephas are not really those guys that are like stud, go get it wide receivers. I mean, Deebo Samuel is very, very, very good, but he's not like stud wide receiver 1, right? Like he's not top 12 type of guy. He is the guy that can be moved around in the formation, and a lot of things can be done with him. That's why he is so good. And I would love to start Brandon Ayuk this week, but who knows what's still going on with that guy. Again, I've got to see him pick it up before I can get him into my lineup. So even though I would like to sit or start Brandon Ayuk this week, it is only going to be Deebo for me because I like him to be utilized in this offense, moved around all the place, in motion, some screens, a lot of different things that is going to mess with this Green Bay team. Monday Night Football, Philadelphia and Dallas. Here we go, Dallas getting a great win against Los Angeles last week. Congratulations to them. For the Philadelphia Eagles, this is going to bring me to my prize picks, prop to watch. Don't forget, download that Prize Picks app, but my Prize Picks prop to watch is going to be Devonta Smith over 50.5 receiving yards. Dallas so far this season is giving up over 48 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, 5th most in the league. I expect Devonta Smith to get over 50 receiving yards this week, so lay down a little bit of a prop action on him. Jalen Reagor is going to be a start for me as well this week. Last week, 12 targets between Reagor and Smith. Just didn't make the catches, okay? This is Dallas. The defense, up and down at times. Sometimes they look really, really bad. Sometimes they look like they're doing what they're supposed to. We know they have some issues on the defensive line and creating pressure. When are we going to get some of these guys back? For right now, Reagor and Smith are both going to be starts for me in this matchup. And then scrolling on over to Dallas, I don't know what's happening with Amari Cooper right now, okay? Sounds like he could end up being fine. Sounds like he might be a little bit limited, okay? Bruised ribs, but if he plays, we play him, okay? We're not changing that. Lamb and Cooper are among the tops in the league right now in terms of targets. And yeah, Cooper didn't play that great last week. He got some nice coverage on him. He did what he could. Obviously, at the end of the game, has that rib injury. Lamb was the guy last week, though. He had a really good game. But these two guys, again, we're missing Michael Gallup. We're using these two guys every single week that we can. And there you have it, our start and sit video for the wide receiver position here in week 3. Do me a favor, if you appreciate that content, you gotta hit the like button, baby. And then also down below, leave me a comment. Who is somebody that you are starting or sitting this week? Give me some feedback. Somebody on here you didn't agree with? You know, be good, all right? Be good, be respectful, but let me know why and give me some pretty good reasons. And then always, if you're new, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.